suggest a one-word or maybe a two-word answer to the following question. What is one of the most powerful things in the world? Don't think too much, just what comes to your head.
Hope.
Love.
Hope. Love.
Love.
Anybody else? Hope, love? Okay, well,
God.
God? That'll get you points with your phone.
Hate.
Okay. Anybody else?
Health.
Health. For
Hate.
sure. Hate.
Optimism.
Optimism.
Friendship.
Friendship.
Fear.
And we can go on. I have an answer in mind though, because of a video, a live video that I just watched just a short time ago. And I learned there that one of the most powerful things in the world is that red nose that clowns put on their noses. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Now,
Red nose that clowns.
yes. So how did I learn this? Thank you to Nahama. Ariel Karen just returned from the border at the Ukraine. And Ariel is a medical clown, part of Rofei Shalom. I guess a dream doctor. And he went over
Right. We saw
within
that.
just a few hours of request with some other medical clowns. And he describes what that nose, and of course, everything else they did with them, did obviously to children, but even to the parents, even if it was just for a few moments.
Yeah.
It took them into another world. So we add one more item,
Laughter.
not just, yes, laughter, and not just physical medical equipment that we've been sending, and Hatzalah, people who go over to do exactly that, to save. And I only learned what made it even more special. At the very end, the broadcaster announces that this is a medical clown from Pediatric Rehabilitation Hospital, Alim, where my sister works. So that even gave me more goosebumps.
Wow.
So, and apparently, just to say one word, because I found this fascinating, he really is considered, I think he's there twice a week, to be part of the medical team. He'll get a call from a doctor, where are you? I'm not starting this appointment without you there. Okay. My second comment, someone shared the following, and it's a good segue into our topic today. Biting into a prune or poppy seed Hamantaschen when I thought it was chocolate is probably the main reason I have trust issues.
Okay.
I like that. Okay, I am immediately sharing the screen today. And let's begin. William James, the founder of American psychology. I have often thought that the best way to define a man's character would be to seek out the particular mental or moral attitude in which, when it came upon him, he felt himself most deeply and intensively active and alive. At such moments, there is a voice inside which speaks and says, "This is the real me." Now, my hope and prayer is that every one of us has a sense and can act according to his or her real me fully. But I think that we, and I hope we do, that we appreciate what's being described in these few words.
You told me that they wrote.
That there are times, please mute, there are times, whether it's I'm sitting enjoying a magnificent symphony or taking care of somebody, that you have this sense, this is me. Now, why does James say at such moments? Why not days? Why not months? Why not always? Why at such moments? Anybody?
I think it's because basically we all wear masks most of the time. And it's the times when we really feel our real selves are few and far between.
Okay, all right. Masks, not just because of Corona and not just because of Purim. Yes, anyone else?
Well, I wanted to say, just from the direction of the shigra, of the routine, that we're busy with our routine, and then you have those moments. I'm specifically now thinking about, it can also be at work, where you have those moments where you feel that real sense of yourself, and it's out of it's not every moment even at work or whatever you're doing, because there's just the routine that we live with.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Nachama.
For Bracha, for me, I
Sarah.
feel that way when I realize that I'm in the moment. Whatever I'm doing, whether it's something wonderful or not wonderful, if I say to myself, I'm in the moment and I'm here and I'm enjoying this,
Yeah.
then at that moment, and it doesn't last long,
Mhm.
then I feel it's the real me.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Anybody else? Well, together with what we just heard, is it perhaps also that we wonder about ourselves? Is this me? Like you said, am I me constantly? When I'm saying or doing something, feeling something? Or does he say this because he knows, James, all too well, that my real me, my true character, often stumbles across obstacles life throws my way. And I'm not, because of that, I'm not living the exact me I feel I am. To be clear, because I want you to understand what I'm saying. And when I was thinking about this, the first example that came to my mind, to be totally honest, was me and Israel. Now, what do I mean? I left Israel when I did. Now it's, I don't know, 33, 34 years ago, expecting that I was going for 1, maybe 2 years. 29 years later, I came back here. Now, anyone who knew me was aware of my commitment to Israel. But me, I was totally aware of some unease sometimes of being, and I love you all. And I'm not just saying that glibly. Very grateful for my time in Toronto. Trust that. But because of my mentality and my heart, I knew that Israel was a part of me, and till I left, every time I bought an electrical item, I thought twice. Life happens, and you end up staying longer at one point.
Got it. Thank you so much.
So that you can come to Israel with, to be quite blunt, a pension. So life happens. So we have different conflicting forces that make us be or do what we do. So I gave this example to make it clear that I'm not just talking about bad and good. No. The question is, are we transparent? Always. And I bet the answer is not, but in this case, I was. But how do we handle personal relationships where we aren't sure who the other person's real me is? Let me ask that again, and if somebody would like to offer, where or how do we handle relationships where we are not sure who the other person's real me is?
Very carefully.
Okay.
All right.
Yes. Anybody else? I think
Guarded, I guess.
guarded, which is saying really the same thing.
Yeah.
And we can control most of the time because they are personal relationships. But there are certain relationships and people we are aware of and are dependent upon as citizens of this world that we can't control, and we're not sure if we can trust them.
But Bracha, we have to be ready to compromise.
Okay, hold on to that. I don't know how we so quickly got to that. Hold on, Esther. And my question is, how do we, leading into our discussion today of the character that we're going to discuss, BIL'AM, how do we endure public figures, world leaders who we don't fully see as an X-ray machine? Do we categorize them as bad or good? You and I know that while there are some who can be called evil, like Haman and Hitler and their current descendants,
Mhm.
Most leaders have their good side and their not so good side.
Mhm.
To take us back to last week and our author, Rabbi Nataf, urging us to be wary of charismatic leaders selfishly motivated. Today, he warns us to be on the lookout for subtlety and subterfuge, the name of the chapter about BIL'AM, as they may be linked, these two traits, to any public figure. It would be simpler if we could say, he is good, she is evil. It would. But that's not the card we've been dealt. Let's look at this first text, the Gentile prophet. The Gentile prophet BIL'AM presents a great problem for many Jewish thinkers and commentators, not because he is not Jewish and God still talks to him. There are many such individuals in the Bible.
Mhm.
The real problem is that he is both a serious prophet as well as a villain. For many Jewish thinkers, this is inconceivable. BIL'AM's character is nuanced, neither purely evil nor purely good. Because if you think about it, to be a prophet, a man of God, but also to be a villain, perhaps we can parallel that with what is happening too much today, that we have very learned people and people who we expect we can respect, and then we find out, despite their knowledge, they aren't such good people. Now, who is this BIL'AM? He is a Gentile prophet from the area of Mesopotamia where Avram actually came from. And he is called upon by the king Balak of Moab to help out. At this point, Bnei Israel, the Israelites, in the desert, almost 40 years now at this episode, they have just defeated the Amorites and the Bashanites. And Balak, the king of the Moabites, is scared. They're powerful. He talks about them in the same way that Pharaoh talked about the Israelites back in Egypt. There are parallels. And so he feels if he wants to conquer them, he can't purely rely on physical strength. And so he calls upon this BIL'AM, the Gentile prophet, who has a wonderful reputation and tries to engage him as someone who, in a different way, in a magical way, almost as a sorcerer, will be able to help Balak conquer the Israelites. Now, who is this BIL'AM? Rabbi Nataf says some more about this. BIL'AM's speeches show that he, like the Jews, accepts the supreme place of the universal God. This doesn't, however, necessarily mean that he denies other spiritual powers, but it does mean that he appreciates that it is the Torah's God who is at the center of the universe and its workings. For BIL'AM to recognize the power of God and to be able to approach him in such a way as to reveal his will through prophecy must have come from great ability and sensitivity. No one can deny that. That's something he has. It must have also reflected deep spiritual insight. In fact, Nataf says, a superficial reading of the BIL'AM narrative reveals, like Moshe, BIL'AM understands that God is in charge. Like Moshe, he sings the praises of the Jewish people and their ultimate triumph. And again, like Moshe, BIL'AM doesn't always take God's word as final, understanding that God allows for some human input into his plans. But a careful reading shows, a careful one, that these similarities are grounded in radically different attitudes toward God. Believes in this power, but it doesn't impact on him in the same way as our greatest leader, Moshe, does. Let's look at some examples of BIL'AM, and they will help us understand why, on the one hand, respect is given to BIL'AM, even by God. On the other hand, we never totally trust BIL'AM. So at this point, Balak has called on BIL'AM. So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian went with magic charms in their hands, and they came to BIL'AM and conveyed Balak's message to him. He said to them, "Lodge here for the night, and I will give you an answer when the Lord speaks to me." They want BIL'AM to curse the Israelites, thinking that that curse will bring them down. Magic. So BIL'AM already, he doesn't say, no, that's ridiculous. So that's one thing. Because he still believes in magic together with his belief in God. "And I will give you an answer when the Lord speaks to me." So the Moabite nobles stayed with BIL'AM. God came to BIL'AM and said, "Who are these men with you?" Now, God knows who they are, but in a similar way, when he asked Adam, "Where are you?" And he's setting him up. BIL'AM said to God, "Balak, the son of Zippor, the king of Moab, has sent them to me, saying, 'Behold, the people coming out of Egypt, a nation has covered the eye of the earth. Come and curse them for me. Perhaps I will be able to fight against them and drive them out.'" Now, does BIL'AM go on to say to God, "Of course, I know I can't do that"? No. God said to BIL'AM, "You shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people because they are blessed." Now, pay close attention here. When Balaam arose in the morning, he said to Balak's nobles, "Return to your country, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you." What has BIL'AM left out from what God said? Yes, God tells him, don't. But what else does he say that BIL'AM does not repeat? Take a
He
look at
tells
it.
them- He tells them that the people are blessed, so you can't curse them. BIL'AM doesn't say anything about that at all.
Exactly, Michael. Okay, now he is talking to God, but he's also aware of who he's talking to on the other side. And he's not willing to say to Balak, hey, you know, these people are blessed. He doesn't want to give that impression that he's on their side.
Bracha, I also find the difference between Moshe and Balak is
Mhm.
the very important part, faith. Moshe had faith. He didn't need God to tell him not to do something.
In fact, okay, that Moshe has the faith. We have a sense here that BIL'AM doesn't have a genuine faith. In fact, okay. Now, Pasuk Yudalid 14. Moab's nobles arose and came to Balak and said, Balaam refuses to come with us. So Balak continued to send dignitaries more and higher in rank than these who had first come. They came to Balaam and said to him, so said Balak, the son of Zippor, please do not hesitate to come to me. Now, what strategy has Balak taken? He's not going to give up. He wants his magician, BIL'AM, to curse. So what's the strategy he takes? Two things there. Look at it.
He's sending people who are higher up.
Okay, now I'm sending out, what's the expression? The real guns. You know
big guns.
what I mean.
Not
Okay,
the big guns.
it's the big guns. Okay, that's one thing. Something else. Look how, and this is something you would know if you read in the Hebrew a great deal, the Tanakh, that Balak is almost competing with God. And he's saying, Ko Amar Balak, you tell God, so said Balak, that I want you to come with me. Now he goes on, continuing with his strategy. 17, for I will honor you greatly and do whatever you tell me to do. So please come and curse this people for me. He is promising him a reward.
It's like a
And perhaps that's the beginning. Now listen to what I'm saying. Perhaps that's the beginning of BIL'AM's real downfall. Now, why do I say perhaps the beginning? I'm pointing out certain flaws or certain points that make us doubt how sincere BIL'AM is. But it is possible that BIL'AM was on the right path, but like so many other times and so many other people we've discussed over the last couple of years, he is bribed or bought if he's really not genuine. We've even said people who are genuine fear that they could be bought. 18, Balaam answered and said to Balak's servants, even if Balak gives me a house full of silver and gold, he's saying this, but whether he really means it, I cannot do anything small or great that would transgress the word of the Lord my God. Now, just as he didn't say something to Balak and his nobles, is BIL'AM sensing that he's got to say this so God thinks that he's genuine? There's a sense of BIL'AM being very manipulative. 19, now you too, a second time, please remain here overnight, and I will know what the Lord will continue to speak with me. He's very free with alluding to this relationship that he has with God. Compare that with other prophets who try to run away. God came to BIL'AM at night and said to him, if these men have come to call for you, arise and go with them. But the word I speak to you, that you shall do. So God is changing his instruction a bit. He's saying you can go with them, but you're only going to say what I tell you to say. Now, you're going to have to look at two words in Hebrew in a moment, because it's totally lost in the translation, the difference. So when, just a second, when God in verse 20 says, arise and go with them, he uses the word in Hebrew, kum lecha itam, lech itam, which means with them.
Mhm.
There's another way of saying with, though. Anybody?
Im.
Yefet. In the morning, Balaam arose, saddled his she-donkey, and went with the Moabite dignitaries. And in fact, what is the word there? Im. Now, God's wrath flared because he was going. And an angel of the Lord stationed himself on the road to thwart him. And he was riding on his she-donkey, and his two servants were with him. Why does God suddenly do a turnaround and get upset? He just told him, you can go, you'll say what I want you to say, but he told him he could go. What has happened that makes him upset? Well, commentators who know the Tanakh inside and out, and when im is used or when itam is used, know the pattern. And this is what the commentator Haktav VaKabbalah says about this. The divine instructions expressly forbade active going with them, sharing their designs, but did not forbid BIL'AM merely passively accompanying them, did not rule out the purely physical traveling back with them to Balak. Go with them, itam, implied a formal accompanying of the princes out of respect, without any purpose or benefit. But God was aware BIL'AM went along with them, not just physically, but deliberately and for the purpose of carrying out their wishes. Okay, so we're getting a picture of this character. Now, something else, I alluded to this a moment ago. At one point, BIL'AM goes back himself to Balak, and Balak insists that he not give up, that he still curse. And Balaam responds to him and says, build me 7 altars here and prepare for me 7 bulls and 7 rams. What is that reflecting? That BIL'AM is still very much into magic. These weren't going to be for the purpose of holy sacrifice korban, but these were used in pagan culture in hoping to achieve the magical effect.
And it's interesting, the number 7.
Yes, yes, okay. Now, let's take a look to find out more about BIL'AM at the part of the narrative that I'm sure we've all heard about. The donkey. The donkey. The she-donkey saw the angel of the Lord stationed on the road with his sword drawn in his hand. So the she-donkey turned aside from the road and went into a field, right? At this point, BIL'AM has agreed he's going to try to curse. And he's on the donkey to proceed. BIL'AM, when the donkey goes to the side, BIL'AM beat the she donkey to get it back on the road. The angel of the Lord stood in a path of the vineyards with a fence on this side and a fence on that side. The she donkey saw the angel of the Lord, and she was pressed against the wall. She pressed BIL'AM's leg against the wall, and he beat her again. The angel of the Lord continued going ahead, and he stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn right or left. The she donkey saw the angel of the Lord, and it crouched down under BIL'AM. BIL'AM's anger flared, and he beat the she donkey with a stick. The Lord opened the mouth of the she donkey, and she said to BIL'AM, "What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times?" BIL'AM said to the she donkey, "For you have humiliated me. If I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now." The she donkey said to BIL'AM, "Am I not your she donkey on which you have ridden since you first started until now? Have I been accustomed to do this to you?" He said, "No." The Lord opened BIL'AM's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a sword drawn in his hand. He bowed and prostrated himself on his face. The angel of the Lord said to him, "Why have you beaten your she donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to thwart you for the one embarking on the journey that has hastened against me. When the she donkey saw me, it turned aside these 3 times. Had she not turned aside before me, now also I would also have killed you and spared her." The she donkey. BIL'AM said to the angel of the Lord, "I have sinned, for I did not know that you were standing on the road before me. Now, if it displeases you, I will return." The angel of the Lord said to BIL'AM, "Go with these men, but the word I will speak to you that you shall speak." So BIL'AM went with Balak's dignitaries. Balak heard that BIL'AM was coming, so he went out toward him to the city of Moab, which is on the border of Arnon at the extreme edge of the border. Balak said to BIL'AM, "Did I not send you to call for you? Why did you not come to me? Am I indeed incapable of honoring you?" BIL'AM said to Balak, "Behold, I have come to you. Do I have any power to say anything? The word God puts it to my mouth that I will speak." Now, I want to ask you, in that whole fantastic episode with the donkey, what has BIL'AM done here? Or more correctly, what has BIL'AM not done here? Let's keep in mind that we have described BIL'AM as a prophet, which means he has wonderful vision, and eyesight and seeing is repeated nonstop in the 3 chapters that are devoted in the desert to this narrative. So is there something that's a little odd, given that background, about BIL'AM and how he relates to the episode with his she donkey?
I think the ungratitude to the donkey shows a negative part of BIL'AM.
Okay. And in fact, whether this actually happened or whether it was a dream does not matter. But there are lessons that God is hoping BIL'AM will glean from this. So one of them is pretty much what Esther just said, that the donkey in asking, have I ever let you down in all these years? The donkey has shown a loyalty that BIL'AM is not, in fact, showing to God. What else doesn't happen that we would think would happen? If you were a prophet and you had good vision, and suddenly this turning and twisting of the donkey 3 times, how do you think you'd react? What would go on in your mind? It's very bizarre. Do you think you would just get angry and act as if this is very natural?
I think it's a common failure not to be sensitive to the reaction of others.
No. But what I'm asking is BIL'AM acting in a way that we would expect, considering he's experiencing this very, very bizarre episode with the donkey? He's just going to expect that the donkey speaks and the donkey chooses to go off the road? Why isn't he, if he really has such good vision, why isn't he seeing something very unnatural going on here? And why doesn't he get the message that God is sending him? You are not to go curse the Israelites.
No complete faith. He didn't see the sign in no complete faith.
I think he is so focused on getting this reward that everything else, he's blind to it. He just doesn't see it.
Okay, so I think we can say both, Michael and Esther, that what we suggested before, he is on a mission. One that he should not be, but he has more, to use Esther's word, faith in Balak than he does at this point in God. So let's see what Nataf says about BIL'AM's eyesight. What we see here is that although BIL'AM might have had crystal clear vision when it came to what he thought was important, his vision could also be heavily obstructed by extraneous personal considerations. Michael suggested. In this narrative, his desperate and single-minded determination to fulfill an ill-fated mission blocks his ability to even notice what should have been an extremely strange and disturbing incident. He didn't lack the ability to see everything. He simply didn't use it because of self-imposed limitations. Now, what does that mean, self-imposed limitations? That he wasn't able to lift himself beyond Balak's proposals. He wasn't. And he didn't want to see it any other way. That was his doing. Now, let's read some psukim that, if we're not sure, suggest that maybe, in fact, BIL'AM, after these attempts at cursing but being stopped, and Balak's urging, does he have a change of heart? Would you think that from the following psukim? He took up his parable and said, Balak, the king of Moab, has brought me from Aram, from the mountains of the east, saying, come curse Jacob for me and come invoke wrath against Israel. How can I curse whom God has not cursed? And how can I invoke wrath if the Lord has not been angered? For from their beginning, I see them as mountain peaks, and I behold them as hills. It is a nation that will dwell alone, a very famous line, and will not be reckoned among the nations. A whole other class. Who counted the dust of Jacob, or the number of a fourth, or of the seed of Israel? May my soul die the death of the upright, and let my end be like this. Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? I took you to curse my enemies, but you have blessed them. He answered, saying, what the Lord puts into my mouth, that I must take care to say. So it is possible that maybe he at this point realizes he should be with God. Balak persists. Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, so he did not go in search of omens as he had done time and time again, but turned his face toward the desert. Balaam raised his eyes and saw Israel dwelling according to its tribes, and the Spirit of God rested upon him. He took up his parable and said, the word of BIL'AM, the son of Beor, and the word of the man with an open eye. You see, he refers to himself with that open eye. The word of the one who hears God's sayings, who sees the vision of the Almighty fallen yet with open eyes. And then he says the next very famous line, which is in our Siddur. We'll get back to that. Ma tovu oalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. He looks upon the Israelites, and instead of cursing, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. And then here he says complimentary, blessing words. They extend like streams, like gardens by the river, like aloes which the Lord planted, like cedars by the water. Water will flow from his wells, and his seed shall have abundant water. His king shall be raised over Agag, and his kingship exalted. So it would appear that BIL'AM has changed. It's possible. What tells us this is not the case? If we move ahead, we know that BIL'AM makes a suggestion to the Moabites when nothing has worked. And now I am going to my people. Come, I will advise you what this people will do to your people at the end of days. Now, we don't know until we read in Parshat Matot what this advice was. Well, it turns out that the Israelites have gone to Midian because they want to exact revenge on them. For what? For a scene that we're not going to read today, but the scene is the following: that the Midianite and Moabite women seduced the Israelite men. Now, how did that come about? Well, in Matot, it says, when asked, and did you do away with the women? And they answered, they were the same ones who were involved with the children of Israel on Balaam's advice to betray the Lord over the incident of Peor, resulting in a plague among the congregation of the Lord. More people died because of that. Now, Balaam wasn't a fool when he saw that he wasn't cursing the people and that it wasn't that he himself was blessing. What did we say? God put the words in his mouth. Now that's also symbolic in the same way that he put words in an animal's mouth. So this is someone who is genuine. He advises because he figures, if the Israelites do something immoral, God can't stand that and he'll punish them. So there was his mind working. No sincerity about caring for human beings. No. Now, I want to ask you, we're in the middle of the desert, almost the 40th year. Why is this story in the narrative? BIL'AM, the Gentile prophet, with the donkey and Balak. What is it doing here? Before I suggest to you
I think.
reasons, I'd like to hear, can anybody with everything that's been said suggest why?
I think God reassures the people that he's around to protect them. They must be worried about coming into Israel after the 40 years of the desert, and they needed like an injection again.
So how does this give them the injection? I think you're on one of the right paths. Esther, do you want to say more?
The fact that BIL'AM blesses them rather than curse them, they see the power of Hashem.
Okay, Yefet. Now, they don't know that BIL'AM isn't the one who composed those words. Okay, yes. They have a sense that they are being blessed, and at a time in their history, they certainly need that. What else?
I think that this story is more for us than for them, because up till now, all we've seen is complaining and revolting and revolutions. So this is a time where we can sort of sit back and God can show us, you know what, these people aren't so bad.
You know, Bracha?
Yeah, let me just, Esther, let me respond to Michael. First of all, I agree that it is a message for us if some of us are wanting to give up on that group of people in the desert, but I think it is equally for them, because I will suggest, as Nataf does, that the whole experience in the Midbar, in the desert, is preparation for them entering the real world. And that real world is going to be made up of things that they're not used to anymore. We'll get back to that. Esther?
I can't help but compare this story to what's happening to us with Purim. The name of God is not mentioned at all in the Megillah, and I think it's on purpose. The people had enough faith in God, but God tells them you have to help yourself. So it's the idea of the faith that appears in both cases.
Beautiful. And I'll let you take us back to something I said earlier. BIL'AM, in still being connected to paganism with the magic, there's also another trait of paganism that Nataf talks about, and that is believing in the doctrine of patterns. Now, to simply say it, meaning that in pagan culture, they were used to these different powers and giving gifts to these powers and feeling subservient to them. And that's the way it was always going to be, which is very different from this people, Bnei Israel, who found their beginnings with Abraham, who gave us monotheism, which is very different from the paganism. Now, you might not think about it like this, but one of the things that was integral to this new way of life and way of believing in God was exactly what you said, Esther, that human beings are going to have a different role in life. We are going to, and I've said this on many occasions, meant to not just be subservient, but to be partners with God. Now, that means that we're not going to be stuck in these patterns, that we are open to new things, and we are not static. Just as an aside. Anybody else?
Bracha, I see this story being here actually as a warning to the people. They're coming to the end of the 40 years, which resulted from the revolt against God and the whole incident with Korach. And the story of BIL'AM is almost like saying, you have to put your trust in God. Do not trust the false prophets who may come along in your history.
Okay, good.
Okay, to me also the Matovu Alecha Yaakov describes how wonderful the Jewish people were that the tents did not face each other. The
Yes.
respect for the privacy.
Okay, yes. All right, that's another interesting detail, but something more, as long as you brought up the Matovu. I think, Marlene, we'll see in writing what you just said, but that Matovu, BIL'AM is an outsider, and he's up above and he's looking down, and we know how easy it is when you're an outsider and you're looking down and you don't see all the details, and you can be complimenting. Would we sooner want him than Moshe, who is constantly criticizing? I don't think so. Now, we want a balance. Maybe sometimes Moshe goes overboard, but never does Moshe do anything that he does for his ego. Nothing. Okay. Unless somebody else wants to suggest another reason why this narrative is in Bamidbar, then let's look. Dr. Erica Brown, an educator I've mentioned before. From a leadership perspective, BIL'AM was critical to the Israelite journey because he served as an outside perspective on greatness when insiders often only saw problems. BIL'AM saw, and that's what I meant, Michael, that they needed it to. BIL'AM saw what the Israelites could not see because they were too close. Mm-hmm. They became blinded to their success and their stature in the eyes of others. They sacrificed broader, expansive vision for the narrow view that was right in front of them. Up close, they could only see loss and challenge. I think we can all identify with that. Now, Nataf closes with these two statements. The story must inform the Jews of what to expect. That's what has to go on as they're preparing to enter this new land. You know, they've been together. It's been like a bubble. In the land of Israel, they would meet compromisers, both Jewish and Gentile, who would seek to moderate the monotheistic revolution by incorporating inoffensive pagan elements into it. They have to be aware that they are going to face different influences. The Torah, he goes on to say, and this is very interesting, risks in presenting a pagan story right in the middle of one of its 5 books. It risks giving legitimacy to BIL'AM's pagan ways. After all, he is presented as someone who does get real prophecy and who is highly regarded by several nations. One might expect that the Torah would have denied BIL'AM a platform and sought to belittle and qualify his prophecy. But the Torah is not afraid of the truths that rival claims possess. It would rather give us limited exposure to these claims so that we can better defend ourselves against them. Not being shocked when we encounter. Ignorance may be bliss, but it is not an effective strategy in the long term. The children of Israel needed preparation for the real world they would encounter once they crossed the Jordan.
You know, Bracha,
Yes.
when you talked from looking from above to below, and you see differently, I was thinking of Bertrand Russell, who wrote, "There is nothing more annoying to the intellectual than realizing that a common man makes more sense than he does." So it's the same idea of looking from the top to the bottom.
Now, interesting thought. What Nataf goes on to say, very pragmatically, as he ends this chapter, is give very specific warning about never clinging to a leader ever. Always being on, we used the word before, the lookout. Last week it was charisma. Here it's that there might be not sincerity. And we have to be very, very careful about that. Now, one more thing that I want to say. In that line about Israel will always be a nation on its own, is that said as a description or a prescription? And we could now spend hours discussing, is that a reality? But I want to, if somebody would like to respond to that, is that something that we are meant to be concerned about?
Definitely.
Why?
Because there is the reality and the condition in which we live, and where our spirit and the neshama pulls us.
So what is that an answer to? That we should care? I'm asking, should we care if we're on our own or not? And I ask that as we begin to celebrate a holiday, which certainly drives home that we have been on our own.
But we are not all our own. I mean, the fact that Israel exists gives us, the Jews in the Galut, comfort. But many of us would like to be in Israel, and circumstances prevent us from. Like I would,
Okay, no, when I say now Israel, though, I am thinking of Israel as a nation. I'll give you that right now, okay?
Then we are a nation no matter where we are.
You are part of this nation, Esther. And Esther, how could I say you're not when you're the key character in the Megillah? You're going to read in a few hours. Really?
I got engaged on Purim, and my husband's name was Mordechai.
Whoa, what people will do to be able to say that.
It so happened I had time off from school, and so it was good timing.
Okay. I'm closing with a question that is eternal, because this was said about us being isolated from other nations. That's not how God wanted us to live. He wanted us to have a nation. And once you have your own nation, now I'm talking about state, you have to deal with the other states of the world.
Well, God commands us to respect the laws of the other states.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm just trying to make a connection now as we close between this and the holiday that is coming upon us, actually is here in Tel Aviv and elsewhere in the country. I think of Tel Aviv because somebody special is there now. Our relationship, it's an eternal question. We have to be where God says to BIL'AM and to Moshe that the people are entering their own land, and we're going to have this as a constant. Beware of the influences.
Well, that's true.
Now, the question is, who is the stronger influence? Is it our neighbors? And I don't just mean the geographical neighbors right here, or is there going to be a day that it's us influencing the rest? And I still believe that we have it within us to influence the rest.
We're supposed to be all Lagoim.
Of course, we are supposed to be.
But the land,
And I believe that we are, for the most part. Every country is going to have its obstacles. And nothing, as I said at the beginning of this class, just as there is rarely a leader that doesn't have two sides, every country to live in this world. I feel like I don't know, I'm sorry. But every country.
But if I read the Torah correctly, the center of the Torah is the Aretz, the country, Israel. To me, that's the main draw.
I'm not sure what that means.
Bracha, I think there's a difference between being isolated and being distinct. And I think as a nation, we should strive to be distinct in our behavior. And talking about behavior, I'm not talking about ritualistically necessarily, but I think that in the way that we address problems and the problems of the world, that we have we should remain distinct and have a distinct view of the world around us.
And I think that overall we have that, but if we want to be very specific, what's the discussions that are going on now in this country? You read one thing, you watch one thing, and within a space of 5 hours, you hear all different sides of, should we be doing this? Should we not be doing that? But it's questions that we're asking. And like the story of Purim, yes, we have a country now that can say, this is the Jewish country. What I'm saying is, just like the characters are complex, the issues are very complex. And one, if they don't want to be superficial, have to be willing to look at every single detail and have trust that the overall perspective is one that we can still be proud of. And if certain things are happening, that it's out of a recognition of the Purim story, that we have to be sure we are also not destroying ourselves. How was that?
Very good. But you know, the fact that Bennett went on Shabbat to see Putin and spend 3 hours with him, he was trying desperately to influence him, obviously. And it was really amazing that he did go. And it was Shabbat.
You know, Bracha,
Yes.
You talk about the Purim story, which I find very interesting, is Achashverosh didn't deny Haman's verdict, but he told the Jews that they can be armed. And so they have to fight for their survival.
Well,
To me, it's a very important point.
Yep. Unfortunately, too many people have to fight for their survival. We should have a day where we don't need the red noses to take us away from life.
But we
But
fight.
until then, thank God for those that are trying to do whatever we can.
But
And I wish everybody healthy and a wonderful Purim. And have you heard this one? Why do women especially drink and drink on Purim?
because of Vashti.
No.
Esther made it.
No.
No, it's a
To
joke.
help forget about the fact that Pesach is in 4 weeks.
I love that.
Good reason.
Yeah, okay.
But don't the rabbi say that she had made him drunk so that he would listen to her? She drank.
Yes. Depending on the year and the week. You say, I said this, I see Michael now. It's funny, I don't see everybody's face. Now I just switch. It's good to see you all. You want to make a certain point, so you bring that in. Esther, you keep being Esther, and everybody else. Do I have to say now, Gloria, you be Gloria, Shirley Ann, you be da-da-da-da-da-da. Everybody, Chag Sameach.
Chag
Chag
Sameach.
Sameach, Bracha.
Happy Purim.
Xavier.
Amen.